Wade Buck, Boba Fett, General Otto, Tia and Gia, Aura Singh, Quagga, Tonto Screech, Huggers, Witten.
Que bueno, mi personas. Welcome to the Ballad of Bane Malar. Through a curveball. When I was thinking about, what interests me, what inspires me, right now, it's the niche pockets that I enjoy mining. It's always fun to discover something like a comic book you didn't know existed. There's been a lot that's been put out in the last couple of years. But welcome to what is normally Cujo Fett, a culture-friendly conversation with friends, foes, just simple folks trying to make it in the world. This is a live stream to elevate folks in the community, wherever they may be. Some of them can be found right up here. The Boba Fett fan club, which is where I keep kind of the live journal of this live stream journey. And some folks are like, it's a strange time to turn up, A lot of folks are saying that Star Wars is dead. I have heard that, and I will say that culture everywhere is under fire. I believe that's why we have words called culture war, etc. But this conversation isn't about that. It's more about promoting just everyday folks that want to turn up. Do you have a indie project? You have a comic book? You have a T-shirt? Come on, talk some Fett or talk some Bane Malar. And this Cujo Fett is for you, and so is Bane Malar. I'll get to Bane Malar in a second. But something was on my mind from last time I did Cujo Fett. I ended with a brief memorial nod to Bob Yurkus, who passed away last week. At the time that I was talking about him, I did not know the pronunciation of his last name, and that kind of checked me because if this is Cujo Fett, we should get names right, especially folks that have put on the Mandalorian armor, especially folks who have put on Boba Fett's armor, which he did for Return of the Jedi. You can see him now, kind of descending from Jabba's palace right before he engages Luke. What I found out that was kind of interesting about Bob Yurkus was he ran away from home at 15 to join the circus. It sounds like, I don't know, some kind of adventure cliche, doesn't it? But what it alludes to is the fact that he had to get out. I thought that was interesting. That caught my attention. Next, the interviewer that was talking to him mentioned that he was a man of faith. That's where he found community. He turned his home into a training center, which folks from Hollywood would come to on the regular. He seemed like the kind of person that you felt welcome around. That to me is noteworthy. So to do it properly, to send off Bob Yurkus, stuntman, Return of the Jedi, Boba Fett, I salute. I see you, and I appreciate what you brought to the character, as well as how you helped folks along the way. I think that's the other bit. I pulled this up, and the framing may be right, but let's see if that'll pull up. Some of these have been loading. Some of them haven't. I'm going to leave that alone for now. But I did want to put an emphasis on community. There we go. You can only get so far without a tribe. And of course, that's a quote from the good folks at the Book of Boba Fett, but repped by the Boba Fett fan club. I think that's important. It's important to remember now, especially now while folks are divided between the rebellion and the empire and everybody sees it their own way. I think it's important to turn up for folks that turn up for you. So that's what I'm going to do. I appreciate all the folks that come and join us on the semi-weekly and talk about one of the nichest best designed characters in fiction. But there was another. There was another. Let's talk about Bane Malar, shall we? What do you know about Bane? There's a couple Star Wars characters that have the name Bane in them. You're looking at the only time that Bane Malar has been created as an action figure. You're saying, well, what part of Star Wars was he in? I would speculate that when you're watching A New Hope, as soon as you enter the cantina, you're in. You're invested. If before you're on the sidelines, as soon as you start seeing tons of aliens, tons of helmets, all those masks, you're in. I think Star Wars works best when it's dangerous, right? And I think that feeling, pretty much all of Empire Strikes Back was that feeling. You know, the heroes are on the run, nowhere's safe. Return of the Jedi, that was Jabba's palace. It remains one of the most enjoyable places to visit in video games. I know in Star Wars Outlaws, you creep it. I know that Jabba the Hutt is still one of the most resonant, reviled characters in fiction. You know, we can all walk down the stairs into his throne room. Of course, later, you know who would be sitting on it. That's another book, though. In Return of the Jedi, and I mentioned it earlier, but I'll set the table again. Who is Bane Malar? You know, who could he be? Well, first, he enters the scene as one of Jabba's henchmen, his associates. I just learned recently, lore side, that Boba Fett was hanging out at Jabba's palace for a full year, off and on, between Empire and Return. Reason, at least in fiction, because of that, or for that, is because of the gang wars that turned up. I think Jabba wanted him on hand. So, Bane Malar is one such voice in that room. Who is he? Well, I mean, he's not as gripping a design. You know, who's under the helmet? Who's under the bubble? I think that's the intrigue in Bane Malar. He has a unique history in the sense that even though he's in Jabba's palace, his scene was deleted. That spoke to me. That still speaks to me for a reason. Because you have a character like Boba Fett in the original trilogy, all of his lines in the movie fit on a tweet. To me, that's the greatest mystery in fiction. But then you have the case, the Ballad of Bane Malar. Bane Malar, scenes cut from the movie, but a still photo finds the internet, finds the public. A picture of a spacer in a dark blue suit with a bubble helmet. I think back in the day, I'm a little loose on the details, but they had a contest that you could write a character's backstory, and that became Bane Malar. At that time, he gets released as an action figure. You remember Cujo Fett #1, my friend Mojo that turned up, lifelong friend. He actually picked this figure up for me. He's a better hunter than I am. But he found Bane Malar, day 1 issue. He's been in my collection since. I can't say the same for his blaster. That seems to have been lost. But as the story goes, Luke turns up. And Bane Malar has an interesting character note. He's a telepath. How many of those in Star Wars are there that aren't Jedi or Sith? I think that right there opens up everything for Bane. So as it goes, he encounters Luke Skywalker, and it hits him like a Mack truck. He knows that while he's an amateur at reading minds, at pushing people around mentally, he knows a professional, he knows an expert, he knows a Jedi when he sees him. What happens to Bane Malar after that? It's the stuff of speculation. But he noped out. He was not on the barge, and he did not commit to the Galactic Civil War. And I found that interesting too. You know, you have all these characters that inspire passion. You know, that's the big buzzword in culture now. He's passionate. She's passionate. They are passionate. You don't see that in Bane Malar. You see objectivity. Was he the first Star Wars libertarian? It might be a reach. It might be. But he didn't want to get involved. The price, his life did not, he wasn't putting his life on the line for Jabba. So the allegiance wasn't there as it was for Fett, who was getting paid to ride on that skiff. So that kind of inspired me. You know, who is Bane Malar? The Ballad of Bane Malar. And it kind of inspires me to, I don't know, create an invitation. You know, we live in an age where culture is speculative, hype is real, projects make and break on the buzz. You know, a lot of people have said that one of the main things in our age is that you never hear new voices, or voices don't get marketed. You know, our leaders are still, you know, boomers. So I guess we have a borderline Gen Xer on the horizon. But my point is that, let me make this invitation. Marvel prints Star Wars comics, Lucasfilm Comics, LucasArts. Here's my invitation. I'm not going to drop names. I'm familiar with all the editors, all that. I'm going to create, not a fan comic, I'm going to create a Bane Malar comic, the Ballad of Bane Malar. And I invite the editors of Star Wars, the editors of Marvel, to a unique situation. That situation is this. Let a creative create a story and then decide if it's worthy to be canon. You know, Bane Malar was created by a fan. His fiction was, not his design. That's my proposal. I'm going to drop some inks on a Bane Malar that I drew, and that'll happen this week. If you're out there, color it. Are you a colorist? What's up? What's up, my man? You're very nice. How you doing, Dagon? That's what I say. If you're an editor out there, consider this an invitation to a creator, a creative process. With respect to the brand and all the folks involved, I'm going to create the most intriguing Star Wars one-shot comic since Twin Engines of Destruction. And I think we both know how hard that hit. So there you go. Before we move on, there's one other story. You know, it's interesting. When you're reading Star Wars comics, Star Wars books, you start to see that the creators or the writers, the artists, they have favorite people they like to draw or write for. And Bane Malar actually turns up in the Disney era of Marvel Comics. You know, somebody saw him and created a comic. That would be Jabba's Palace #1. I think it's called like 4. Anyway, it's about the robot that C-3PO meets in Return of the Jedi, who's getting pulled apart. Remember, they're like, "Are you a translator droid?" This comic is about that robot. That doesn't sound very inspiring, right? The characters are hit and miss. The art, though, I want to say the artist's name is Miracolo. He's an artist, I believe, out of Italy, actually. And the reason why I brought him up specifically, this is a page from that comic. I think up top you'll recognize a familiar face. I like the way this artist draws Boba Fett, don't you? I would say it's more of the Temuera Morrison Boba Fett with the way those shoulders are pushed back. He's definitely flexing there. I like the design. I appreciate it. At the bottom of that page, you'll see Bane Malar. What do you notice about that? How deep cut Star Wars are you? He's a little under-designed for me. I think that the Bane Malar that I draw, you'll see a little more details. But you see that pew? That's cute, right? Except it's wrong. That's a slug thrower. It's a regular rifle. And that was curious too. You don't hear that term in Star Wars too much, slug throwers, but his rifle is one. And I always imagined that, Jedis can manipulate energy. They can stop blaster bolts, right? We've seen it. Can't stop a slug. Can't talk to metal. So I like that little part of his character. I wanted to bring up some questions. Actually, when I was looking online, for about a week now, I've been looking at Bane Malar tweets, believe it or don't. There's some good Bane thinkers out there. There were some people that proposed a Cad Bane, Bane Malar team up crime drama, Bane to Bane. I see you. That's not bad. That's not bad. I think that you have to answer a couple questions. One thing that I like about Bane in this era as a character is he's addicted to spice. Hold the phone. This ain't your grandma's Star Wars. How would you portray that in a comic? Somebody who's addicted to a euphoric substance that gives them a telepathic or psychic boost. You know what that could look like visually on the page? It'd be amazing. But this is what I would ask you, dear viewer, is how would you portray that? I imagine it comes through his filtration system, right? Is that what you're feeling? The Bane Malar pipes on the side of the helmet. I think that's how I'm going to treat it. But if you think dude's popping the shell off and yeah, no, you're not wrong. Vagon says they'd make a. You know what? I think that is in between stories gone right. Gone right. You see a lot of culture pop up, and it's like, oh, why did you feel you had to explain that? That's not a detail that enriches. But in the case of Jabba's palace, everybody is a point of intrigue. I mean, there's even a comic about the band. So I think people get that. So how does Bane Malar take spice? Question number one. I'm going to go with it's in his helmet ventilator. Second, has anybody in the Star Wars world ever explained what spice feels like on the page? And that's either comics or books. I'm here for that. Hit me up in the comments. And I think that's where I'll leave it with Bane Malar. He's a character who's been on my mind. And, it's interesting because, people are like, oh, is the clone era played? Or is it, where do we go from here in Star Wars? I think there's still some wiggle room with minor characters. I think it's the era of the story in the trenches. I don't think people are as radical as most think. I don't think that there's a whole lot of love for Jedi or Sith. I think most people are just trying to make it day to day. I think that's why a Bane Malar comic could hit right now. The first galactic libertarian. Who knows? You know what? I forgot to do this right, guys. We might have to start this all over. You already know. So before we wrap up, I've been talking for 20 minutes about the Ballad of Bane Malar. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Like I said, I will drop a Bane Malar piece of art this week. And I would compel someone to put some colors on it. If you're a colorist out there, this is what I propose to you, that we will create the most interesting Star Wars content this year. You have my word. I'm going to end like this. I'm going to go back and ping some social media. As you know, I talk Boba Fett, but Boba Fett Fan Club social media hits too. There was a tweet that dropped this week. What one Boba Fett book, comic, episode could you read over and over? I like this kind of engagement because it opens up conversations. Of course, the Boba Fett Fan Club, to pop the lid off, went with twin engines of destruction. Andy Mangles, the first one of the first Boba Fett authors that I felt like explored the character with nuance. That was back in what, 96? So there wasn't too many folks talking Fett. There wasn't too many ideas out there. But Twin Engines of Destruction, I concur with. The art is sharp, and honestly, that cover still plays. The colors still pop. I believe it won some awards in its time too. So we have Mary Fett talking about Star Wars Adventures. I'm looking at this Fett art right now. I like it. I like it. Well designed, well drawn. He's not this big. That's a bulky Fett. That's more Jango. That's not Boba. Let's see what else we got. Oh my God, I'm on fire. Went with enemy of the Empire, Boba Fett. If you recall, that was when they retconned one of the times why Boba Fett had a dent on his helmet. That was from Darth Vader's hilt. That fight took place much like Revenge of the Sith on a lava planet. It was pretty intense. It was pretty intense. I'll echo that. Good artwork. That cover hits. What else we got? Star Wars Underworld. I'll roll with that. I'll roll with that. You know, somebody mentioned the artist Cam. Let's see, what's his name? Okay, that's a good Fett cover too. That is too. I'm sorry I've gone low tech. As always, I come to you from my common space here in Colorado Springs to turn up with Fett and Bane. You already know. That's Cam. Why am I blanking on his name, guys? Somebody help me in the comments. He's one of my favorite Fett artists. But yeah, get in the comments about that too. What's your favorite Fett? Like I said, I'll turn up about every week, but this is what I'm going to build. Let's go the Ballad of Bane Malar. And this is where I'm thinking the comic goes. The jump off has to be a point you recognize. I think that's good expanded universe or non-canon content. I think that's the best way to go. Give people a moment they already know. I think you have to start with everybody leaving on the skiff and a conversation between Fett and Malar. Malar saying, dude, why are you getting on that skiff? Boba, of course, says, because they pay me to. And Bane's like, no, I've seen his mind. He's a Jedi. And Fett goes, Jedi don't frighten me. And Bane's like, well, they do me. And then Fett probably says, well, enjoy your public transportation off planet. Because he knows that Fett has more Skrilla, has his own ship, can do what he wants. But that's where I like Bane's jump off. One last thing. He could be the Deadpool of Star Wars in this way. If he's a mind reader, he can talk to the reader. That makes him the most interesting character in the room. And it makes it appropriate. You know? A character that doesn't want to join either side of the conflict. He just wants to enjoy spice and, of course, bring people to justice. So if you're looking for some Bane Malar content, of course, dig up Jabba's Palace, where he does solve a crime. So anyway, this has been the Ballad of Bane Malar. And I would encourage folks, if you see me turn up, Cam Kennedy, you're right. Thank you. Cam Kennedy had a unique take on Fett's helmet, and there's no two people that draw it the same. So I mean, I think that just adds to the lore. One of these times, we're going to have to go through the different artists of Fett, and I need some company for that. But for the Ballad of Bane Malar, here's my proposal. I'm going to start drawing the comic. I need a colorist, and if you're an editor out there, if you're somebody who has sway in the Star Wars brand, who's a better character than Bane right now? I don't want to hear any more about Jedi or Sith, but I like the shadows. You know, I like the corners. think there's still some room to look around. Anyway, thank you as always. I do this to keep myself agile, to turn up. You never know when you might need to turn up for your community nowadays. So this is a good reason to. And don't forget, folks are going to New York Comic Con this weekend. One of the friends that's turned up, Dan, Jedi Master Dan, headed to the East Coast. Daniel, of course, you'll have to pop on next week and tell me how that went. But if you're headed to the East Coast, enjoy some Fett, put it on your timeline so we can enjoy it too. Until next time, the Ballad of Bane Malar continues. But, you know, I'm not going to leave without my boy.